Welcome. My name's Guy Dauncey, and you'll come to the right place for Change the World. This is the weekly show where we explore big, bold ideas that we hope are going to make a big difference in the world, because we sure need some big difference to be made. My guest today is Chris Brown.
Hello.
Who is a local farmer, organizer, cooperator, dreamer. Have I missed anything off the list, Chris?
One of my titles is I'm an agricultural entrepreneur and activist.
Okay, and what does that mean?
So I make my living as a farmer, and I'm really interested in the restoration of agriculture on Vancouver Island. And so I'm active in all sorts of different fields, so to speak, to spread agriculture.
And agriculture in Nanaimo, is there a history of people growing stuff locally, or was it all the Hudson's Bay Company?
Nanaimo has an interesting history that isn't based in agriculture. The history of Nanaimo around agriculture is the coal mines allocated 5-acre parcels of land for the coal miners, so that when they weren't actively working in resource extraction, they had a little homestead for which to care for. So those exist in the Harewood neighborhood, and there are still 2 or 3 remaining parcels. But if you are riding your bike through Harewood, there's some big old apple trees that are colonial.
So down in Victoria, the word on the street is that we're growing 5% of the food, and the rest is all coming in on the ferry. Is that true mid-island as well?
Yeah, we are growing a very small percentage of the food that we're consuming here in Nanaimo, and that's a real challenge because we are not food secure, we're not food sovereign. We're completely dependent on the importing of food through mainly the ferries.
So why is local food, if someone's watching and they're saying, well, you know, what's the difference, local food, imported, why does local food matter?
Well, it's better for us. It's super fresh. It's coming direct from the farm versus being imported, which has a huge carbon footprint because often the food is coming from Mexico, the United States, New Zealand, sometimes flown in jet fresh, which is a real paradox. And so the local food is fresher, it's healthier, has a smaller carbon footprint. It's promoting a healthier community, which means there's less costs to the medical system. And it goes on. Farmers are invested in their land, they're invested in their community, they're employing people, they're spending money on seeds and things they need to grow their food.
How did you first get into farming yourself?
So I don't, I mean, we all have an agricultural history, but recently my family wasn't involved in agriculture. I studied anthropology at Vancouver Island University, and I had a couple epiphany moments realizing that the fates of civilization are really dependent on how well we manage our land and our food resources. And the lessons were very poorly managing our environment right now and our food environment, and that's leading to a lot of sort of chaos and climate change. So my realization was growing food solves a lot of the problems that we're creating and regenerates a lot of those problems.
And you're working with other people?
Yeah, so I'm working on a farm team. We're called Farmship Growers Cooperative. We're a team of farmers, and we're working on a farm site in Yellow Point right now.
Well, let's look at the photos you gave me of what we got. So let's get the first image up, the winter, the van in winter.
And we have a year-round growing climate, even if it's in the snow. So we plan for winter. We grow cold, hardy things. We have a root cellar. And so here's a picture of us just a couple weeks ago, and we are about to head to market there.
So now we're getting into sowing. What's happening here?
Yeah, so this is Isabel. She's kind of the farm captain. It's her family's farm that we're working out in Yellow Point. That's her in the lowland with our cedar. We've got an amazing soil that we have to take careful of because that's our most precious resource. So she's planting summer crops, I think carrots right now. Yeah,
this looks like something psychedelic and amazing, all pink and white. So what's this?
Pretty much, yeah. So this is Greg. Greg is a farmer with us, and these are potatoes that we've taken out of the root cellar, and they are ready to be planted.
Very ready.
Yeah. So those are potatoes we've saved for planting for our own seed, and in the background, that's our field that's been prepped. So we planted several thousand pounds of potatoes this summer.
And now we're getting into summer, right?
Yeah, so that's our real gun. That's how we water a lot of our lowland. And we draw our water from Michael Lake. And, you know, we grow a lot of food. We've got a big piece of land out there.
That's a big field.
That's a big field. And this farm is really super important because it can grow a lot of food and hire and employ a lot of farmers.
So right now, where are you selling the food to?
So FarmShip sells year-round. During the main farming season, we're at all the local farmers markets. Right now, every Wednesday, we're selling 3 to 6 at the Pleasant Valley Hall on Dumont Road. So today, Wednesday, was market day.
Okay.
And we also offer a box program. It's called a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture.
So if someone's watching and say, well, what's a box program?
Yeah.
Can you explain what a box is?
Sure. So we offer something called community supported agriculture. At the beginning of a farm season, people purchase a box from us, and it's a subscription. And every week they receive the freshest, picked hours ago vegetables right to their door.
And what's your website?
Farmship.ca is our website.
Farmship.ca,
and we will be offering 33 weeks of boxes in the 2017 growing season.
So now, next image here.
Here's Caitlin. Caitlin's a farmer with us as well. This is actually in the late spring, and that's our herb garden. And so Caitlin has been farming, her and I have been farming together for 5 years, and at FarmShip for 4 years. So she's a super farmer.
So your herb garden's deer fenced, I can see. So the deer aren't in the rest of the farm, are they coming and going?
Yeah, so I mean, something that we've built up at this farm is infrastructure. We have 14 acres of deer fenced field, and infrastructure is super important to a farm because, you know, without the fencing, the irrigation, the greenhouses,
so this is deer fenced within deer fence to double safety, is that it?
Well, nope, this is a single deer fence.
Yeah, okay, but is there a wide outside perimeter fenced as well? Or?
There is not.
Okay, this is,
nope.
yeah. And so then what's happening next crop up? It looks like you've had some rain here. This is after irrigation?
This could be in the fall. So our farm is a seasonal floodplain. It's ancient lake bed is what we're growing in our lowland. So when it rains, our field floods.
Wow.
So this fall, in October, it rained 29 of 31 days, and our field flooded quickly. So we got the potatoes out with hours to spare before it flooded. Yeah. And every fall, we have to get several thousand pounds of roots out to put into storage. So
you make jokes about growing rice in the fall, right?
Well, I mean, we can grow rice here. It's amazing the things we can grow in our climate.
Yeah. And how many varieties of tomato are you growing?
I think this season we grew 15 varieties of tomatoes.
Yeah.
Something that we're really passionate about is providing a lot of different things for the market table.
Yeah.
You know, people come to us and they say, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And it's a lesson every time someone comes to the market. And things in the grocery store aren't selected for freshness.
Well, I know if I'm looking at these, I'm going to go the top row, third one in, those dark, closest to Russian black tomatoes, the small ones.
That's a tasty tomato.
The tastiest.
Yeah, they're so full of flavor.
Totally. Oh, actually, bottom right, I missed them. Bottom right looks even more flavorsome. Right?
And those would have been picked hours before they're sold.
Fantastic. And pigs.
Yeah.
Explain.
So pigs are great farm workers. So we raise pigs, and these pigs eat the farm compost that we're not able to sell or isn't pretty enough to go to market. And we're also working with Loaves and Fishes, who are the food bank in Nanaimo, who have something called the Food Recovery Program. Yeah. And they're taking food waste from the grocery stores and distributing to low-income people who need it.
Are these heritage pigs or particular?
And then we're able to feed these pigs that food waste that doesn't get distributed. These are called Ossabaw Island hogs, and they are a heritage pig. And they are also amazing in the sense that they're amazing workers. You can fence them off in an area, and they'll turn the soil for you, fertilize the soil.
Brilliant.
And you can move them from field to field, and then it's completely enriched after they've worked that area.
So instead of that food waste ending up in a landfill or something, it's going right back into the biological cycle.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And squash.
Yeah, squash is an amazing crop because it stores for a long time, and it's super high in vitamin C and nutrients. Yeah. And so we have a garlic and a squash rotation where we have a squash field, and then after we harvest the squash, the garlic goes in.
Okay.
And so here's about a third of our harvest, and that's in storage right now, and we'll sell it right up until April and May.
Yeah. And then coming in towards the end of the year?
Yeah, so this is our garlic field that we'll harvest in July 2017 this year. And so we've worked it up. That was previously a squash field.
Yeah.
And then we mulch it with leaves so that we don't have to weed it and water it as much.
And then finally, the end of the farming year?
Yeah,
this to me is about the love of the land and the love of food.
Absolutely. You know, it's an amazing feedback cycle, growing food and eating the food and becoming, you know, having that relationship with your land, you know.
Yeah.
Farming is really about relationship growing with your soil, with the community, with your plants.
So turning away from the farm ship, what do we need to do to get more people aware of locally grown food and being able to buy locally grown food and get used to it?
Yeah, so we're really promoting the culture of local food. It used to be just how we lived. We grew our food around our homes, and that was our lifestyles. But now we've really become dependent on grocery stores and imported foods, and that's become the predominant culture. So what we really want to do is invite people to participate in local food. Get to know your farmers, come to the farmers markets, and really make the choice to eat local.
I know that you have a bigger vision of being able to sort of live collectively on the land and have villages of people on the land. Tell me something about that.
Well, what farms are missing right now is a village to support them. Historically, the village would support the farm and the farm would support the village. And now, you know, farms are underproductive. The main crop on Vancouver Island is hay.
I've seen.
There are huge, vast expanses of fields that are available for production, but what they're lacking is a team of farmers to work that land. And so if we were able to live on that land, we wouldn't have to drive to the farm. It'd be right there.
Well, farmers all over the world live on their land. And especially if the Canada geese come in, you've got to know. If the deer break in, you've got to know. If a particular crop's getting a root fly or something, you've got to know.
If it's going to frost.
You need to be present,
Absolutely. So there's really been a discontinuation with the cycle of farming where farming historically was associated with poverty. And so people worked really hard so that their kids wouldn't have to become farmers. And so people left the farm, and now farms are mostly owned by elders growing hay to retain their farm status.
But if I think back in history, like several hundred years to Europe, where my ancestors come from, farming wasn't associated with poverty. There was pride in the farm. Everyone was engaged. There was ceremony. There was festival. There was shared. You don't even, the term of a work party wouldn't even happen. There was always having work parties. Yes, there was more labor, and now it's more machinery. But I know so many young people who would love to be able to live on the land, raise their children on the land, have education on the land.
I think values are really starting to shift as we realize the importance of food. And we really need some support from governments of all levels to really realize the value of local food and help young farmers get onto the land, create opportunities to realize that farming is a trade, just as valued as an electrician, where growing food is really valued. So we're trying to come up as a cooperative with a structure to get farms into production, to train farmers, and hopefully soon have these farm villages that can support farms.
It's sad to me that there is so much land just growing hay, knowing that we're importing all this food from abroad, and knowing that, I mean, when I came back from England, England's about the same size as Vancouver Island, more or less.
32,000 square kilometers.
I'm not sure of the number. Is that it?
Vancouver Island's 32,000
I thought it was a lot more than that. Yeah. I'm sure it's a lot more than that, but that's another story. And England's got a population of close to 60 million, and Vancouver Island's like 750,000. And people are afraid of population development because they think it means more sprawl and more traffic and everything. But if you picture a farm village being, a tight traditional village, people on foot working together, sharing transport together in and out of town, sharing a minibus,
it really makes sense.
It makes sense
Yeah.
if there's a way to make it happen. I know you have a vision for a wider cooperative economy as well. What's some of your thinking around that?
Well, we've really become an import economy. So we're importing goods and services, and our money is leaving Vancouver Island to import those things.
Yeah.
And, you know, if goods and services were available locally, I think people would support them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this return to the cottage industry where people are making clothes which are grown from local fiber,
Yeah.
and people are doing value-added things. And, you know, with the natural resources and climate of Vancouver Island, we could have a green economy.
It's such a challenge between clothing coming in from Bangladesh when you can buy clothes ridiculously cheap, made in some sweatshop, but it's bringing work for the Bangladeshis who are, for them, they've moved off the land. I see these films in China when the peasants who've been on the land want nothing more than to get into the city. They can double their income. And yet we want to go the reverse direction. There must be a place to meet in the middle.
Well, part of adapting to climate change, which is something we really need to start talking about, is adapting to climate change, is about changing how we consume, how we live.
Yeah.
And you know, we could live hyper locally, where all the things that we consume, from food to fuel to fiber, clothing, is available on Vancouver Island.
Yeah. Well, one of the science advisors to Obama a few years ago said that by 2050, there may be no food coming out of California because of the drought, the snowmelt in the Sierra Nevada no longer irrigating the Great Central Valley. And what that means is just enormous in terms of our implications for rethinking how and where we're growing food. And we've got a great growing climate here.
Yep. Yeah, year-round growing climate.
Yeah.
And you know, we could grow food in the city, in the country, kind of everywhere, if it were supported. And the farmers really need to be able to make a living growing food.
Yeah.
And for that to happen, people need to buy directly from the farmer instead of going to the grocery store. And, you know, talking about the science of this, organic farming sequesters carbon from the atmosphere. So if we, you know, if there was research to support the numbers behind that, I think the government would be supporting us.
I think that there are numbers. I mean, fundamentally, organic soil has got more carbon in it because it's got more recycled biological materials in it which store carbon.
Yeah.
And so there's more organic matter in the soil. So one of the ways to draw the excess carbon out of the atmosphere is through organic farming.
Yep.
And permaculture, ecological farming, all those things.
Well, if the government were seeking carbon credits, they could hire a farmer to grow a huge crop of fava beans, which draw a ton of carbon out of the atmosphere, and put it into the soil.
Yeah.
You know, these are the different services that farmers can do for society.
Fava beans are also, if I'm right, fixing nitrogen in the soil.
Yep.
Which is, you know, so, and with organic farming, you're not bringing in any artificial fertilizer. So how are you fertilizing your fields at Farmship Co-op?
Yeah, we're doing a crop rotation where we're growing cover crops.
Yeah.
And we're also using inputs from local horse farms that have manure, and we're trying to mulch and companion plant as much as possible.
And so you plow the cover crops in?
We turn the cover crops in and then have a 4-year rotational
and are
cycle.
You plowing, what are you using to turn them in? I haven't seen any horses on the land down there.
Yeah, no horses. There are some big tractors out at this farm.
Yeah.
And so we disc it in.
Yeah. So if you imagine ahead farming without fossil fuels, when tractors running fossil fuels aren't available, do you see an electric tractor which will be heavier, or do you see going back to horses one day?
Well, it's kind of a multi-phased approach.
Yeah.
You know, in nature, resiliency is important. And I think one of the greatest challenges of climate change are the loss of biodiversity and all these things. So many approaches are beneficial. So we could have electric tractors which were powered from a solar panel or a wind turbine in the field, because there is a big field.
Well, all electricity on the island is all zero carbon basically anyway.
Yeah, so and we've got a huge field that has full sun exposure all day long that we could generate.
You could generate easily.
Farming the sun as well.
Yeah. You don't think about the tractors compacting the soil too much because of their weight? Is that an issue?
Well, if the tractors were driving on a specific route where they never drove on the beds and the beds stayed a bed perpetually, I mean, there are all sorts of different strategies.
Yeah. So why is organic farming more important than regular conventional farming?
Well, during the, quote, green revolution of the early 70s, where they started using genetically modified crops and these things, it was a big boom at first. You know, imagine not having to weed your field when you could just spray poison on it to kill all the weeds. But we're seeing a real decline in productivity due to these conventional practices.
Yeah.
So organic farming is all about building the biodiversity of the microorganisms in your soil, which have a direct correlation to how much fertility and nutrients are coming out of the plants. So really, we're growing soil first, which then grows our food.
That's a thought to wrap my brain around, that you consciously have to grow the soil, right?
Yeah, it's really becoming the prevalent thought that the soil is so precious, and the biodiversity of the soil is really the most important thing.
Yeah. Sometimes when you drive up the new highway, you can see where the rocks cut and what a tiny skim of soil there is. Because after the Ice Age, everything was stripped bare, right? And all that soil has accumulated over, 12,000 years.
So, you know, soil is a finite resource.
Yeah.
Soil, water, air, these are all very finite.
Yeah.
And these are this food is what we put in our bodies. And why not put in the food that's healthy? We're looking at all the health concerns that people are suffering from these days, and a lot of them are related to eating essentially sterile food that isn't alive and not promoting a healthy flora in our bodies. And so this is why organic farming is so much better, because you're eating living things.
And what about insects and bees and butterflies and birds?
Yeah, again, promoting biodiversity. I was talking to some elder farmers recently, and they're seeing such a decline in the wild pollinator population. And 60% of the food we eat is pollinated by insects. And so these are, again, finite and precious and need to be promoted. So one of our strategies is growing companion plants and a large selection of different plants to attract insects, to create habitat for beneficial insects.
Imagine if pollinating every single flower by hand. On a fruit tree, I mean, it's crazy to think about it.
There is a village, there are some villages in China that have hand pollinating festivals where everyone goes around with paintbrushes and pollinate their fruit trees, just because there are zero insects. They've all been killed by the pesticides that were used on the conventional crops.
That's so crazy.
It really is crazy.
That's really crazy.
It's like alarm bells, right?
Yeah.
This is real, and it's happening very quickly, and everyone is invited to try to help reverse this.
If a thing happens slowly, it seems, like over 50, 100 years, it seems like we don't notice. We're all geared to have the big drama, which the television covers, and the fire or the car crash or something, we pay attention. But if it's slow, gradual change, we kind of think that it's normal. And to have bees disappearing on us can't be good, right?
No.
And to have local food growing on us, so that we're reclaiming those traditions of farming, has to be something really powerful, right?
Well, this could be how we solve all of our problems that we've created, is through local food. Because a lot of the environmental destruction that's happening globally, the cutting down of the forest, is all because of conventional food production. So they're cutting down rainforests right now to grow palm, which is predominantly for the candy industry.
Like down in Indonesia and places.
Indonesia, Borneo,
Yeah, I gather in Indonesia they're also cutting down traditional rainforest to grow biofiber to put into our diesel, to have biodiesel, so running our trucks around on it. So it raises questions like, is that the smartest way to go?
Right.
But then we don't have real long-distance electric trucks yet. So
no. Yeah, we're really at a crossroads right now where we've got to act quickly and make some decisive decisions. But unfortunately, it's not the culture. It's not popular for, the governments don't think it's sexy per se to support farming. It's all about the big projects, the big energy, the resource projects. Whereas to support the local growers and the local producers and the local entrepreneurs is really investing in the community, because those people want to stay in the community and have it succeed.
Yeah. It also, I mean, it's clearly a way to to bond with the island. People have been raised and born on the island, but people will think it's not well paid. I mean, what's the financial opportunities in food growing?
Yeah, it's tricky. There isn't a lot of money in food growing right now. I mean, we're building capacity. It's to make it a viable lifestyle, but that's something that we're all working on right now.
But I know down in Victoria, Saanich has a community farm called Halliburton, and each person has a couple of, I'm not sure how many acres they have, but several acres each. One of the farmers there, and the two of them were earning $60,000 off 1 acre a year, and that was about a quarter in costs. So they were pulling in, as he explained to me, if you're shared living, you can't buy a house on that, but if you have a shared living situation, it was very adequate.
So that goes with, farming is a lifestyle.
Yes.
It's a lifestyle where you're not spending a lot of money, you're growing your own food, so your costs are low. And there are strategies where, through relationship building, an individual farmer needs 50 families to buy their food, and then they can make a living off that.
Well, that seems like a doable relationship, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Just 50 households and one farmer. That's especially through the box program. Then the money's going direct to the farmer through the box program.
Yeah.
So if viewers are just tuned in and they want to buy food from you, what's the website again they need to go to?
Yeah, so our website is farmship.ca, www.farmship.ca, and we're offering a community-supported agriculture box program for the 2017 year.
So what would be in a box? We've just got a couple of minutes left now.
Yeah, sure. So we're seasonal market gardeners.
Imagine we're midsummer. What's in that box of food I'm going to get?
Midsummer, wow, we're growing like 50 different things in the summer. So cucumbers, tomatoes, basil, greens, melons, summer squash. But we start seeding in February and we stop seeding in November.
So when does the box start? When can you first supply the boxes?
The box program starts mid-spring and it finishes on the winter solstice.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I mean, I hope some viewers take the opportunity to go to Farmship, farmship.ca.
Farmship.ca.
And sort of start getting local food. So on behalf of all the people who are eating your food and enjoying it, thanks very much indeed, Chris, for joining us here. This has been the show Change the World. My contribution to Change the World is my book, Journey to the Future, which is an exploration of life 20 years in the future when we become one of the greenest cities in the world. And my name is Guy Dauncey, and thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.